Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli, the computer guy, here with the Daily Blob to announce a first. The UAE, a Middle Eastern country, is currently winning the AI arms race. Oh my golly, who thought it was gonna happen? Wait, what? Is Israel just bombed all of their data centers? Oh, Israel just said Hamas was hiding in a server rack, ergo all the data centers had to go boom. I'm sorry, dear UAE folks. I have to apologize, but the fact of the matter is, a lot of folks are a little uncomfortable with your technological development. So maybe it would be best if you just went back to herding goats. I think we can all agree that instead of worrying about artificial intelligence, it would be much wiser if you just went back to herding goats. It's only cringy because you're like, wow, I could almost believe that. Anyways, I think this is an interesting story just to show how AI development is actually going and why I think it is a very weird pipe dream, or maybe a dream that's inspired by smoking pipes for the United States to have, supremacy in the AI sphere. What we have been told from the Biden administration, our first dead president, to whatever the hell this president is, right? What we've heard is that we must have supremacy in the AI arms race. And one of the things that I've been arguing about for a while now is that's just not how the fuck technology works, boys and girls, right? The real questions in life, in technology are, can you make the damn thing work, right? That's a huge question. Before somebody proves it is possible, you don't know. You could put billions of dollars into R&D and have it be absolutely worthless. Can it work? Can it scale? Once you got to do it once, can you iterate it on 1,000,000 times? And then basically, does anybody care? What does the profit loss look like, right? If it costs you $4 trillion to create a product and you get $100 billion in revenue, that's what we call a loss in the normal business world, right? And the thing is once you get past those particular issues, then technology is just simply knowledge. It's knowledge and it's skill sets, and it's things that other people can relatively easily, quote unquote, easily replicate. And so I've talked about this with, our anti-Chinaman policy here in the United States, trying to prevent China from getting artificial intelligence, because they should just be happy with their rice paddies. I mean, come on, Chinaman. Do you want to work in a data center? Do you really want to try to change the world? Wouldn't you feel more comfortable hopping around a rice paddy, right? So anyways, right, we have the people here in the United States that think the Chinese folks would be much more satisfied with their lives trudging around rice paddies, living in mud huts, right? And as I've tried to argue, that's not how technology works, right? The factory of the world, if they can produce a whole bunch of other things, they can probably figure out how to produce this AI hardware in a period of time. And at some point, they'll actually be doing it better than us, right? And then beyond that, since we're worried about China getting AI access, then we start hammering all of these other countries, and then other countries start worrying. So I talked about this in one of my last videos where ASML is the Dutch company that creates the lithography equipment that allows companies to produce silicon, produce chips, right? They have just invested in Mistral. They've just invested, I think they now own 11% of Mistral. And one of the ideas there being is they want, right, to nationalize, or with Europe, have within a geographic region their artificial intelligence power, right? They don't trust China, man, nor do they trust America, man, at this point in time, right? They want to create their own AI stack. which is going to be yet another AI stack. And what's interesting, right? Well, if America does something and China does something and Europe does something, well, the Middle East, the Middle Beast wants to be involved too. And that's where we have UAE Lab releases an open source model to rival China's DeepSeek and also OpenAI's ChatGPT. And I find this to be interesting just to show you how replicatable artificial intelligence is, right? This whole idea that we are going to be able to control AI basically through export controls or whatever else, and that we will have preeminence as an American, we have preeminence in this sphere, is just fucking idiotic. It's just dumb. It's just not gonna fucking happen, right? And so it's interesting to see more and more investment all around the world in artificial intelligence. And I also wonder when all this is going to blow apart, because as I've talked about before, there's just way too much investment into this particular technological sphere. It's not that LLMs are not important. It's not that they're not going to change a lot of things in the world. It's not that the multimodal models and the reasoning models and all that kind of stuff aren't massive improvements. But the question then becomes, but how valuable are they worth, right? Sam Altman was talking about spending like $4 trillion on data centers, just on CapEx expenses. He wants to spend $4 trillion, right? OpenAI theoretically is now worth $500 billion, and Anthropic is theoretically worth $183 billion. XAI is worth north of $150 billion. Mistral is worth $13 billion. That's a nice number right there. That Mistral has a reasonable valuation. Anyways, right? There's just so much money getting pumped into this. And the question at the end of the day is where are the returns actually going to be, right? If you invest at $100 billion, you want the idea you can get a $1 trillion return. You don't invest $100 billion to get a $50 billion return unless you invest in the Vision Fund. Unless you pump money into SoftBank, but that's its own snark session over there. So what's curious here is to see the Middle East, right? The Middle East is dumping a lot of money into artificial intelligence because it's supposedly the new oil. Whatever. And so it's curious to see what's going on globally. And again, that's an important thing. Like one of the things that I try to explain to my viewers is many of my viewers are non-American. I shouldn't say an international audience because you're not international to you. If you're French, you're French, you're not international. But I have a global audience. An important thing to understand and to be thinking about with a global audience is that you have options in tech stacks that we don't necessarily have here in the United States, or we just have such strong legacy equipment here in the United States. It doesn't make a lot of sense to go off and try some different tech stacks, right? You know, when you look at DeepSeek, when you look at some of these other things that are coming out of China or whatever else, I'm not particularly anti it, honestly, as I've been talking about, but I'm probably not going to go whole hog into it because we have options here. I'd rather use Ollama Pi or the Ollama LLM framework with Microsoft Pi, or Granite, IBM Granite, I think is a good model to use. Very interesting. But one of the things to be considering, right? If you're outside the United States and you're thinking about building your modern platforms, building on the modern stacks, one of the questions you really have to ask yourself is, does the American stack still make sense? Do you trust China? Again, that's one of the interesting things coming up from a business standpoint, right? There's this whole idea of the world as either America or China. And a lot of people around the rest of the world are like, hey, there's other countries out here, jackasses, right? That's an important thing to be thinking about. It doesn't have to be America or China. It could be the European stack. It could be a Middle Eastern stack. It could be a specific, an Indian stack or something like that. And so that's something for you to be thinking about within your particular environments, is what stacks do you feel most comfortable in building on? Especially within regulatory environments, right? If I was an engineer in India right now, I would be scared shitless of the regulatory environments. And I'm not going to get snarky in anything with India and the regulations, but you just go back, you just read the news and what India does sometimes with regulations and things, and that shit will make my ass pucker. Right? And so that's one of the things you need to consider, right? If you are developing an AI-powered company in India, one of the things to really consider is what stack are you going to be building on, right? So India and China, we're having a lot of issues. Now they seem to be playing nice because India and the United States are having a lot of issues, right? My president decided to dump 50% tariffs onto India. Oh, that's real. That's true. So anyways, right, it would make sense if Modi wants to big smack our dumbass president. And so that's one of the things. Tech stacks, tech equipment. Why should my country build on your stack when you're literally trying to punish us for trying to feed our population? The problem you run into as a startup company or as a tech person is you get in the middle of geopolitical idiocracy and you've got to chart your path forward, right? A lot of people say, Eli, why do you keep talking about politics? This is a technology channel. And as I've argued for a long time now, if you want to be a technology professional going into the 2030s, I would actually argue you get your Juris Doctor degree over a comp sci degree. I think that'll actually do you better in the technology world. But anyways, that is my ranting. The UAE, the United Arab Emirates, wants to compete with the US and China in AI, and a new open source model may be its strongest contender yet. An Emirati AI lab called the Institute of Foundation Models released K2 Think on Tuesday, a model that researchers says rivals OpenAI's ChatGPT and China's DeepSeek in standard business benchmarks. And that's one of the things to be thinking about too with a lot of these models, is we hear about these, the frontier models, the models that are doing the best and the greatest. And as I've argued for a while now, who cares? Maserati can come out with a new car. Here's the deal. Maserati could come out with a car that can do 0 to 500 miles an hour in half a second. And you know what I'm going to be driving tomorrow? My Ford Escape. My Ford Escape. Love my Ford Escape. Ford should sponsor me. I'm just saying, right? One of the big things to understand, right? Think about that with so much of the stuff that's out there. It's like, wow, there's this new frontier thing. And the reality is what you actually need to do your job is probably a hell of a lot simpler. Again, if I was going to go buy another electric vehicle, I would be buying a Chevy Bolt. Oh, wow, Tesla does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. Yeah, but my Chevy Bolt can park in a little bike lane. That's what I care about most. And I think that's going to be an interesting thing to be thinking about going forward with artificial intelligence is, again, what do you really need when you're looking at the requirements of your project, when you're looking at resource consumption and resource prices, when you're looking at the outputs that are required, when you look at your regulatory environment, do you need that frontier model or do you need something that's just pretty damn good? Quote, with just 32 billion parameters, it outperforms flagship reasoning models that are 20x larger, the lab wrote. I think this is interesting. It goes back to my argument against first mover advantage. There's a concept of first mover advantage. If you're the first mover into a sphere, the idea is that you're going to be able to monopolize and own it. The problem that you run into is many times first movers burn through all of their money and resources simply trying to prove a concept and then don't have any money to scale and actually sell the product past that. And then the second movers and third movers can come in, learn all of the lessons of the first movers and go from there. I think one of the interesting things with this, the idea of a 32 billion parameter model performing better than a 20x sized model is the idea of if you give it better training data, right? What we heard from Anthropic, what we heard from OpenAI is the idea, the concept that they literally trained their models on everything on the internet. So when you train your model on the internet, don't be shocked when your LLM is batshit crazy, right? The curious thing, and I've talked about this before, one of the things that I find fascinating with the Granite model from IBM, right? The Granite model from IBM, they only trained the model on like corporate enterprise communication. They did not train it on Twitter. They did not train it on Reddit. They did not train it on the comment section of this fucking YouTube video. They trained it on corporate communication. And one of the reasons is when they think about security and safety, they want to make sure that even when their LLM hallucinates, it does it politely. and uses the right pronouns and all of that kind of thing, right? And I think that's kind of a curious thing there. And so one of the interesting things of the UAE is the idea of, instead of focusing, and this is the big thing with hardware, instead of focusing so much on get all the data possible and then throw it against the most expensive hardware that exists, what if you do filtering, some high quality filtering beforehand, so that you're only training your model on actual high quality data? Will that actually massively improve the performance? Researchers also claim that K2 Think leads, quote, all open source models in math performance across several benchmarks. And that's the other thing to be thinking about with these LLMs. What are they going to start specializing in? Is one better at speaking and being nice, being a therapist? Is one better at math? Is one better at writing code? That type of thing. The model is intended to be more focused on math, coding, and scientific research than most other AI chatbots. The Emiratis Labs selling point for the model is similar to DeepSeek's strategy that disrupted the AI market earlier this year: optimized efficiency that will have better or the same competing power at a lower cost. Quote, by proving the smaller, more resourceful models can rival the largest reasoning systems, this milestone marks the beginning of the next wave of AI innovation. Ping Zhao, a council member of Abu Dhabi's AI and Advanced Technology Council, said. Zhao is also the CEO of G42, an Emirati AI development company that co-launched the K2 Think model. The company last made headlines for inking a multi-billion-dollar data center deal with the Trump administration earlier this year, which has since been mired in national security concerns. So basically, they're going to be building a multi-billion-dollar data center, buying a hell of a lot of American hardware, and then Trump was like, ah! But have you jumped through enough hoops? Have you jumped through enough hoops to buy billions and billions and billions of dollars of our hardware? Which again, goes back to that whole question. Whose hardware do you want to buy? Do you want to buy American hardware, where the US president can decide on a dime he doesn't like you and you can't buy the hardware anymore? Or do you want to buy Chinese hardware, where they're like, and what else would you like? Let's see here. The lab is also aiming to be transparent in everything. This is curious. In everything, quote, open sourcing not just models, but entire development processes that provide, quote, researchers with complete materials, including training code, data sets, and model checkpoints, IFM said in the press release. So I find this to be an interesting thing, right? So I got into an argument. I didn't really get into an argument. I walked ass backwards into a stupidity session with an actual Meta fucking employee. When I was in Austin, I went somewhere and I met a Meta employee, and they said they were like the evangelist or whatever for the llama models, right? Basically that they were supposed to be an intermediary for talking with developers about the llama models. And so I was like, wow, I got some questions. So anyways, one of the questions I had is why they called it an open source model, right? Because we had just had the AI for VP model, the VP for AI models for IBM on a fireside chat, David Cox. So you can go see the fireside chat there. One of the things he talked about with the Granite model is that they give you pointers to where all the data is that the Granite model was trained on. Right, so the idea being is they want it to be an open source model. The issue that they run into from a legal standpoint is they can't actually redistribute the data the model was trained on, right? Even if the data is available and they have a license for the data, compiling the data and putting it onto their servers might have some copyright issues. So what they do is they say, well, we're going to give you all this information, plus we'll give you pointers to the data that we trained on, and then it's up to you, right? If you want to burn your GPUs trying to literally recreate Granite or tweak it in a little different way, you can do that, right? And so that's an interesting thing from the open source model. Like when we talk about these LLMs and we talk about open source, there is a real question there. Like Linux is open. When I say Linux is open source, I can literally not just see the code, but I can modify the code. And I understand what the fuck I'm modifying. Maybe, hopefully, right? The thing is, like with an LLM model, right? It craps out this model, and okay, you got the model, but it doesn't fucking mean you can do much with it, right? Is that actually open source? And so that was an interesting thing with what IBM is doing, and why you need to look at all these different companies or their models, is they recognize at the end of the day, you're just gonna get this model crapped out, and even if you call it open source, what the hell does that actually mean? So they try to do the accoutrement around the model to give you a lot of transparency there. And that's one of the things I started having this conversation, and then like I say, I walked ass backwards into a stupidity session about why Meta feels that Llama is open source, because Llama does have restrictions on it. You don't get what data it was trained on, and the whole 9 yards. Basically, Llama, as far as I would be concerned, is free but proprietary. Not necessarily a bad thing, right? Adobe Acrobat, free but proprietary, but it is what the fuck it is. The curious thing is I sat there, right? Oh, this was a tech bro. This was a tech bro. And I'm just like, look, why do you call it open source? Well, people disagree on whether or not it's open source. No, you all call it open source. Nobody else calls it open source. So why the fuck do you? Well, there are disagreements, and basically we get down to this point where I start where I'm like, and then he says, well, it's free. It's like, okay, again, I said free does not mean open source. Adobe Acrobat is free, absolutely not open source. Well, you can fine tune it. And then it was curious, right? So this is an actual Meta fucking employee. This employee is supposed to be talking to developers about using the Llama model in their fucking projects. And this jackass literally states the reason it's open source is because you can fine tune it and it's free. And to be clear, I got home that night, and I was talking to my wife. And and I was like, look, dear, I don't scream at the fucking interns. I do not browbeat the interns. This is a real employee for Meta. And I was like, yeah, why was I browbeating him so much? And then I was like, oh yeah, because he was supposed to be part of developer relations for the Llama model. This is why you fucks are gonna get laid off en masse. Here's the deal. If you want to understand why you fucks are getting laid off 10,000 at a goddamn time, you don't even grasp the fucking question on the idea of whether Llama is open source or not, and to be able to have a reasonable discussion about it. The outreach from Meta for the fucking Llama model thinks being able to fine tune the model and that it's free literally just means it's open source. I hope you find a good job. I hope the next job you find is a good job, because I don't think this is the career you should be in. But anyway, so what's interesting here, right, is with the UAE, again, when you start talking about things like open source, you talk about the sizzle, not the steak. What are the things around the model that you can sell? What are the concepts? What are the ideas? Why is one model a Walmart model, and one model a North Face model, and one model a Patagonia model, right? And so the idea here is to be transparent in everything, open sourcing not just models, but the entire development process. Right? So that might go beyond IBM. So how do you acquire the data? What are the processes you go through, the whole 9 yards, that provide researchers with complete materials, including training code, data sets, and model checkpoints? I gotta say, that right there, that's a hell of a selling point. I mean, I'm not really sure what they're selling because it's open source, but that's a hell of a use case. Like, oh, huh. That's interesting. The long-term plan is to incorporate K2, I think, into a full LLM in the coming months. The Emiratis are serious about AI. The country counted 672 new AI companies between June 2023 and June 2024, making the fastest growing AI cluster in the Middle East and North Africa region. The lab behind K2 Think was established by Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence, which has its headquarters in Abu Dhabi and two research hubs in Silicon Valley and Paris. It was founded a couple of years ago as part of the Emirati government's AI overhaul strategy called Artificial Intelligence 2031. And that's one of the big things to be thinking about with the AI world. Everybody's dumping a shit ton of money into this world. I just remember Mike Rowe. I remember when Mike Rowe was really popular, the Dirty Jobs guy. And his phrase, his catchphrase or whatever, buzzline, whatever you want to say, is see where everybody else is going and then walk in the opposite direction. I am just saying, those might be some of the wisest words you will ever hear about actually making a successful career. I want you to grasp how much money is being dumped into AI right now with questionable value propositions. Trump also announced in May that Abu Dhabi and Washington were partnering to create the largest AI data center cluster outside the US, built and operated by G42, the company that co-launched K2 Think on Tuesday, and with the help of NVIDIA, OpenAI, Cisco, Oracle, and Japanese firm SoftBank. It was sounding good until they said SoftBank. You had me until SoftBank. But that deal has faced U.S. regulator scrutiny over security concerns, right? I don't know if we can trust a goat herd. I mean, do you know what they do in the UAE? Oh, I think they herd goats. Are we going to give goat herds technology that's more dangerous than a nuclear weapon? Yuck, I want to do it. Anyways, that's basically what the political discussion is here in the United States. It's like, well, do we trust Chinaman? No, we don't trust Chinaman. Oh, do we trust UA? I think they herd goats. Would you give nuclear weapons to a goat herd? Is the argument going on in the halls of power right now. I'm just going to put this on the table. This might be one of the very many reasons the rest of the world is getting really tired of our shit. Let's see here. Particularly regarding the UAE's relationship with China, Chinese tech and AI firms like Huawei and Alibaba have been expanding their influence in the UAE and the Middle East at large. Because, hey, if the UAE can't buy American products, China will sell it to them. The Emirati's growing bet on AI is driven by a desire to diversify investments and reduce the economic dependence on fossil fuels like oil and gas. The trend is seen in the rest of the Arab world as well, particularly in the oil-rich Gulf states. Saudi Arabia created a $100 billion AI investment fund last year as part of its effort to diversify. Saudi Arabian Data Vault is moving forward with plans to invest $20 billion in AI data centers and energy infrastructures in the United States. Elsewhere in the Gulf, Qatar Investment Authority was a significant investor in the American AI company Anthropic and a $13 billion funding round last week. So more and more Gulf money is going into the AI sphere, and surprise, 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 they're trying to build homegrown technology. And that's why, however cool artificial intelligence is, I don't even know if this is this a bubble at this point? I don't know what it is. There's just a tremendous amount of money going into it. I think the curious thing here is just seeing how other regions of the world are starting to take this technology and run. An important thing to understand, one of the reasons I absolutely despise our current American policies towards the rest of the world is there's this idea that industrialization, like certain people can industrialize, but other people can't. Like there's something in your DNA that allows you to build factories or whatever else. The important thing that I keep trying to explain to people is these are just skill sets. These are just skill sets, right? It's skill sets, it's infrastructure, it's building on legacy, right? It's trying to figure out how to build a decent road. And then once you figured out how to build a decent road, how do you figure out how to build decent buildings? And then once you have the buildings, then you have, some people doing some stuff in the buildings. And then how do you manage more people? How do you manage managers? How do you create financing regimes? How do you do all this kind of stuff to actually be able to build large projects? And this is just literally just skill sets. It is literally just skill sets. As we've seen, right, the Industrial Revolution basically started in the United Kingdom way back when, expanded to the United States, it expanded to Japan, it expanded to South Korea, it expanded to China. Why? Because there is no gene for industrialization. Industrialization is simply a process and a skill set. My big concern, right, as the rest of the world wants to stop being fucking goat herds and living in dirt huts, is they are working to industrialize because it just makes sense. And as we start to see more and more competition all the way around the world in order to build products and services and be able to deliver them, the current situation that we're putting ourselves in is just a really, really, really crappy situation. Think about this. We came to preeminence. We came to power when every other major society on the planet committed essential civilizational suicide at the exact same time, right? You had World War I and World War II in Europe, right? Europe was the preeminent power until they fucking blew their own goddamn nutsacks off. Dear Europeans, don't blame me for your shitty ass reality. You folks did it to yourself, right? You had China, or you had Japan, then go to war with China. Obviously, we got into World War II. We dropped the nukes on China, or on Japan, and we basically leveled them. China should have been a big power. They had the Cultural Revolution and the Great Leap Forward and all that kind of stuff, and literally murdered more of their people than basically died in like World War I, right? Think about this. Europe imploded. Japan imploded. China imploded. At the exact same time, all of our industrial capacity literally had zero issues and just kept building up and up and up and up. And so yes, when other civilizations commit social suicide and your society still maintains growth, you're going to be successful in a global environment, right? This is not rocket science here. The issue is, right, hopefully the world wars are over, hopefully, the other countries are just on the natural track of industrialization, and what we're going to see is we're just fundamentally, functionally just not that special. Anyways, that's my thought. So what do you think about this? What do you think about the UAE releasing an open source model to rival DeepSeek and OpenAI? What do you think about basically the selling point of it, the idea that the entire process of creating the model should be as transparent as possible? And what do you think about this, of just other regions in the world actually pushing ahead with artificial intelligence and having a reasonable success rate at that? Do you think that that the United States can maintain, theoretically, maintain preeminence in the AI space? And even if from a pure compute standpoint, or from a pure frontier model standpoint, we do, at what point does that become ever less relevant? I don't know. Put your thoughts down below. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs down. Call me amazing. Call me a moron. Just do it like a real alpha dog down in that comment section. Do remember SiliconDojo.com is alive. We are going to be having in-person classes in Durham, North Carolina. We're going to have in-person classes in Asheville, North Carolina. And we're continuing to have fireside chats. We have Kyle coming on, the CEO and founder of Huntress, a $2 billion cybersecurity company. He is going to be on in early October. That is going to be a Zoom session. So if you're interested in those types of things, make sure to go to SiliconDojo.com, become a member. It's free. It puts you on the newsletter list, and you can see all the cool stuff we're doing. I'm really excited. I'm going to American Underground in a week just to verify everything there in Durham, North Carolina. Everything should be fine. We've been communicating. Everything should be fine. If that's the case, relatively soon, we're going to start having the classes there. And again, also here in Asheville, North Carolina. So if you actually want to learn how to build things, if you want to learn how to solve problems, then you can come to a class and learn how to build things and solve problems. Will it get you a job? Fuck if I know. That is not my responsibility. Anyways, with that, see y'all later.